the previous videos, we mentioned about preparations for the presentations, specifically referring to the preparations of the slides, which is actually not following the proper sequence from the introductions to the conclusions. In fact, the advisable sequence for you to prepare your slide, it will be in the reverse manner, which is starting from the conclusions to the introductions. And then when you need to review your presentation slide, as well as when you want to do the rehearsal for your presentation slides, only then you will start with the introductions until to the conclusions. It was mentioned that the entire presentations needs to be properly designed in an optimized manner, strictly following a theme, and everything needs to be in line and intact, so that there is no contradictions in terms of the informations given in different sections of your presentations. We also mentioned that you need to limit the numbers of take-home message to an acceptable number that allows the readers to memorize and recall even after the presentations. A good number will be 3, as this is the most optimum number. You may have slightly more, such as 4, but it shouldn't be too many, which at the end of the day, the audience cannot recall, and this defeats the purpose of ensuring the audience grab everything out of your presentations. In these videos, we're going to proceed our discussions on the common mistakes that normally we have in preparations for the slides, as well as for the verbal presentations. We shall look into this one by one. Let us talk about the common mistakes related to the slides. First is the new terminology suddenly appear without being introduced previously. This normally happens among the students, especially when the students expect the audience are able to grasp and have the same understanding of certain terminology as per the student themselves, which normally this never happen, especially when you deal with technical jargons or some new terminology. You know that we need to be careful with the terminology used, even though some words seems to be synonyms, but if you look into deeper, there will be very little variations among the two terminologies. You cannot assume that the audience will get the same definitions of the terminology that you use as per what you intend to express. Therefore, normally when you need to have some new terminology being introduced, there should be some introduction to it before you can use it, so that the audience and the presenters are in the same wavelength, talking about the same thing. Next, the title shouldn't be too big, and the normal text shouldn't be too small, and the font size shouldn't be inconsistent, shouldn't be colorful, and shouldn't be lengthy. You need to be careful with this. This also normally happens when the title seems to be extremely aggressive, but when come to the normal text, it seems to be too tiny. This will lead to a significant contrast in terms of the emphasis to the title, instead of paying attention to the normal text. Sometimes, the student may choose to have inconsistent text throughout the single page, or throughout all the slides in the presentations. The audience do not like inconsistency. The audience has the ability to adapt with certain things, but it requires time to adapt. Normally, the adapting period, it will be at the starting of the presentations. As you know, different presenters may have different styles of presentations, as well as different ways to prepare the slides. Therefore, if a presentation section consists of several presenters, you're going to expect the audience trying to adapt with the new presenter every time the presenter changes. Once the adapting process established, you will have to maintain the consistency, reducing the effort of them to further adapt with your presentations so that they pay more attention to your presentations. Same concept apply to the colorful text. Colorful text in fact is not necessary. You see most of my slides are in black color, which with the highest degree of contrast when you use a light or white background. Sometimes you may need to emphasize certain words. You may either choose to bold the text still in black color, or you may want to use another color such as red and blue. Even if you use the other color, the majority of the text within your slide should still be black. It is quite distracting when you have a colorful slide filled with text with different colors. Next, the space is not fully utilized. This also happens. Sometimes we see the students having a large piece of slides with only little area filled with the text. There will be a significant portions of blank slide, and the text seems to be extremely small. That means the space is not properly utilized. You must first keep your text in the comfortable size, make it consistent, and then you should properly utilize the space for the comfort of the audience. Next, the common mistake with the figures. It is either too small, too blurry, unclear text, overlaying labels, unnecessary line, font size inconsistent with normal text, and so on and so forth. When you want to present the figure, of course you want the audience to be able to look into every single details presented in the figures. When the figures appear in the slides, it is not meant to just demonstrating the existence of the figure. In fact, there will be purposes of the figure where it can deliver important informations which cannot be effectively delivered through the text. That means the figure presented, you need to allow the audience to be able to read the figure. The figures which is too small, too blurry, unclear text, overlaying labels, unnecessary line, it will defeat the purposes of having the figures, particularly in terms of the informations, to be delivered to the audience. Those should be avoided. You should avoid printing screen from your computer because this is going to affect your resolutions and your figures become blurry. Normally you do the presentations, it will be on basis of your technical writing. Normally you have the technical writing prepared before your presentation, which in this case, you should just copy the figures from your technical writing, which are made up of numerous lines and colors, giving a good contrast as well as resolutions. Don't go for the easy way just by printing the screen. The figure become blurry and it discounts the amount of informations being delivered to the audience. Another common mistake is on the tables. Sometimes there will be missing footnotes for abbreviations. This you need to be careful because these abbreviations, unless it is properly explained or properly defined, the audience will need to guess it. Some may not be able to guess what is the actual meaning of those abbreviations. You need to make sure your slide is standalone, where the audience is able to comprehend your slide without listening to your presentations. Next is about the equation. It is presented in a very complex manner. The symbols not defined properly and the linkage is not demonstrated. You know, presenting equations is something inevitable in engineering research. No matter what kind of research that you carry out related to the engineering, most likely you're not going to avoid any of the equations. And the problem with the equations is the complexity, as it is an extreme conditions of squeezing a lot of informations together into one equations. There will be a lot of symbols. Each symbol carry each different meaning, and there will be relationship between the symbols to show their correlations, and sometimes there will be linkage between different equations, especially when you need to demonstrate how the equations are derived. This is rather challenging. In order to overcome this, you know that you are presenting the equations, which you actually do during your preparation of the slide. You should also put some notes, which is principle based, to tell a story between the equations. As during the verbal presentation, what you are actually presenting is the conceptual part of the equation instead of reading the equations. And when you want to deal with the derivations of the equations, you can actually use the graphical manner to show the linkage and the relationship, as well as the flow of the derivations of the equations. And when you explain it, again, you will have to deal with the conceptual part. This will reduce the resistance of the audience towards the complex thing as presented in the equations. Another problem is the citations is not in line with the reference list. This also normally happens because you know that your presentations normally will not present 100% of the informations as per the technical writing. At least there will be a significant part of the literature review not being presented, as in comparison to some other sections, it is less significant. This will lead to a situation that there will be a new set of citations, which you will have to look into the citations to ensure they are in line with the reference list. Next mistake, it will be the slide not self-explanatory. You know that when you do the presentation slide, the slide itself needs to be self-explanatory. Imagine an audience do not really listen to whatever you say. The audience will only read your slides. You will need to make sure the audience are able to acquire all the contents that you have for your presentations. The function of the slide is to complement your verbal presentation, and the functions of the verbal presentations is to complement the slides, which both of them must be self-explanatory by their own. This is something that you need to aware of, and it is significant for your effective presentations. Sometimes you're going to see the slide with only figures and tables, without any proper captions or without any notes to guide the attentions of the audience. This will leave the audience to have their own interpretations in terms of the main storyline as well as the focus of their attentions. You will need something to guide them towards the direction you would like them to have, which is in line with your presentations, so that they do not run off thinking about something else which is not the focus of your presentations. Another common mistake with the slide is that the slide is full of text and no emphasis. You know that the information that you have in the slides is a combination with those important and unimportant. I mean in terms of the weightage or the significance in terms of the information that it carries. You know that every point to be presented in the slide must be important, but even within the statements of that particular point, there will be text complementing or servicing some important text. Even within different points, there are certain points are to be emphasized and worth the attentions of the audience. You should have some emphasis on that, and this emphasis needs to be in line with your verbal presentations in order to maximize the effects. Next common mistake is inconsistent position of the title, text area, and line spacing. This is something related with the adapting with your presentation styles. If you observe my slides, nearly every single page stick within a certain specified framework, and there will be some common areas, common positions of my text, among all the slides. You need to make sure all this in consistent manner so that you don't see text flying here and there throughout your presentation slides. This is going to be quite distracting to the audience. And then there will be some gap between the methodology and result, data and results, and the process are not properly demonstrated. You need to know that your presentation itself need to be standalone, although it is on basis of the informations given in the technical writing. But you will have to assume that there are audience who actually have not read through your technical writing, only attended your presentations. You need to cater for this kind of audience. Therefore, everything must be properly linked. There shouldn't be a significant gap between different sections. The necessary process should be appropriately demonstrated or explained in order for them to have an idea, finding where is the head and where is the tail, and have an overview of your entire research. Next, we will proceed with common mistakes of the verbal presentations. The first one, it will be your pace. You need to ensure your pace to be consistent, not too fast, not too slow, not to be quite inconsistent, sometimes very fast, sometimes very slow. You need to tune your pace because during your presentations, you are actually thinking at the same time when you do the presentations. What you speak normally is slightly slower than what you think in your mind, because what you are thinking is what you're going to say later. After what you have spoken now, the next statement that you're going to make, you should have already have those ready in your mind. Therefore, controlling the pace is very important so that whatever is in your mind can smoothly fit into whatever you're going to speak in your mouth in the proper pace. Then the audience will feel comfortable with your presentations. Another common mistake with the verbal presentations is reading the text. We mentioned about this. You should refrain yourself to do that unless you are not really interested to gain good impressions from the audience. It is an easy way out for you to read the text, reading from the first to the last. But you know that this is not going to be helpful for the audience to understand the content of your presentations. Next one is reading the alien words. That means you read a lot of numbers, symbols, abbreviations. You know that everything comes with the numbers, symbols, and abbreviations. The audience requires second thoughts in order to correlate those with the actual meaning of it. And then before they can finish the cycle of understanding symbols, abbreviations, and number, most likely you have reached to the following numbers and they cannot keep up with your pace. This is not really meaningful to the audience, which will end up to be alien words to the audience. This will lead to the audience to disconnected from your presentations, cannot really keep up with your presentations, and lose focus of the main point and the message that supposed to be given to the audience. Another mistake with the verbal presentations, it will be the purpose of each slide is not made clear to the audience. You know that your presentations will need to keep only the essential things, and every single part of the presentations must serve the purpose. There is a need for those to be in your presentations, and this kind of purpose need to be clearly delivered to the audience. You should not leave this for the guessing of the audience or for the audience to decide whether it is useful, how it is useful, should the audience pay attention on this, or should the audience just ignore that. You should make everything to be clear to the audience in order to make your presentation effective. The next common mistake, it will be the lengthy explanations and missing the focus. This normally happens among the students. Even those students with good English fluency, sometimes the students are too confident about their presentation skills, lacking of rehearsal and practice, never really thought of optimizing the presentations because they are too confident with their English speaking. They can speak very fast without second thoughts, and the explanations might end up to be very lengthy. This might also happen with those not really good with English speaking, where they process the thinking in the mind cannot keep up with what the presenter is about to speak. Then it loses the focus, repeating certain things and providing lengthy explanations without ever to pinpoint the most important part to make it clear and to make it straight to the point. This is something that you need to think about it. And it is not only happening to those cannot speak good English, it also happens to those with good fluency of English. The main reason is not about how fluent you are with your English speaking. It is whether you actually plan your presentation. Do you really optimize every statement that you have made during the presentations? This leads to the importance of proper rehearsal, where every single point that you're going to speak during your presentations must serve a purpose. This is something that many students not aware of, and if you have lengthy explanations covering so many aspects, you lose emphasis. Sometimes you yourself lose the focus, and you cannot expect the audience will be able to get the focus.